China is a key partner of African nations in terms of trade and investments.
The streets of Ouagadougou shook in August 2025. Engines roared, metal clashed, and the capital city of Burkina Faso witnessed a scene that looked more like a military parade in Beijing than a struggling Sahelian nation. Rolling into military bases under heavy guard were brand new Chinese armored vehicles, artillery systems, and rocket launchers. Machines of war never before seen in West Africa. It wasn't rumor, it wasn't propaganda, and it wasn't speculation. Videos quickly verified by defense analysts showed endless rows of IN-22B fire support vehicles, PLL-05 self-propelled gun mortars, and State Route 5 multiple rocket launchers, all painted in desert and jungle camouflage. Burkinabe soldiers stood proudly beside them. Engineers prepared the machines for deployment, and for the people of Burkina Faso, this was more than just a weapons delivery. It was the visible proof that their country had taken a bold leap away from Western dependence, straight into a new era of military sovereignty, a leap into the future of warfare. The centerpiece of the delivery was the VN-22B, a six-wheeled armored vehicle designed to withstand direct hits from armor-piercing rounds. Armed with a stabilized 30mm autocannon, it can fire with precision even while on the move, an ability that instantly transforms how Burkinabe forces can respond to ambushes on the rough, hostile terrain of the Sahel. For a nation that, until recently, relied on pickup trucks and outdated carriers for frontline operations, watching these futuristic vehicles roll past must have felt surreal. Beside them stood the PLL-05 self-propelled gun mortars, hybrid systems that can operate as both long-range mortars and direct-fire cannons. This means insurgent hideouts can be bombarded from a distance, and if militants try to rush in close, the same platform can pivot to direct fire. For an army-long force to choose between slow, exposed mortars and vulnerable artillery crews, this kind of battlefield flexibility is revolutionary. And then came the State Route 5 multiple rocket launch systems, the most eye-catching of all. Capable of firing guided and unguided munitions up to 70 kilometers away, the State Route 5 gives Burkina Faso, for the first time in its history, a credible long-range strike option. For militants who once retreated into the deep bush or across borders, believing distance made them untouchable, this is a nightmare. The knowledge that precision-guided rockets could rain down on their camps at any moment is a psychological weapon in itself. More than just a delivery, this was not the first shipment. Over the past year, Burkina Faso has quietly received Chinese CS/V-14 mine-resistant vehicles, CS/VN-9 armored carriers, and Shachman heavy trucks to build up logistics and mobility, but the August 2025 delivery stood out, not only for its size and sophistication, but for the fact that it was shown openly to the world. Unlike earlier shipments that slipped in quietly, this one was broadcast proudly, signaling to both Burkinabe citizens and foreign powers that the era of scraps and hand-me-down weapons is over. Burkina Faso is rearming with state-of-the-art tools, and it is not hiding it. The timing matters. Western aid has been shrinking. France has withdrawn. The United States has scaled back. Promises of international support rarely translated into weapons on the ground. Into that vacuum stepped China. Not with speeches, not with conditions, but with convoys of steel. The message was clear. Where the West retreats, Beijing advances. Why Burkina Faso needed this? To understand why this delivery matters so much, one must step into Burkina Faso's recent past. Since 2015, the country has been ripped apart by insurgencies. Villages in the north and east were burned. Government outposts were overrun. Entire communities were displaced. By 2024, nearly 2 million Burkinabe had fled their homes, making it one of Africa's worst humanitarian crises. The army, under-equipped and overstretched, often found itself powerless. Militants on motorbikes or pickups struck villages and convoys with speed, disappearing before soldiers could respond, armed mostly with old Kalashnikovs, a few aging carriers, and scattered artillery. Burkina Faso's military was constantly on the back foot. The insurgents adapted faster than the state could respond. Every time the army seemed to regain ground, militants reshaped the battlefield, forcing soldiers into a cycle of reaction rather than initiative. This is why the new systems delivered in August were not just tools, they were lifelines. The VN-22Bs allow convoys to move under protection and fire back with precision against ambushes. The PLL-05s give commanders flexibility to strike hidden insurgents from distance, then switch instantly to close combat support. The State Route 5 rockets destroy the advantage insurgents relied on most, safe havens beyond the army's reach. And beyond tactics, these weapons bring something just as vital: morale. For years, Burkinabe soldiers felt abandoned, fighting with outdated equipment against enemies who struck with cunning and speed. The arrival of advanced weaponry tells them that their state is investing in their survival and giving them a real chance at victory. In a conflict where psychological warfare matters as much as bullets, that shift in confidence is priceless. Why China, not the West? But here's the bigger question. Why was it China, and not France or the United States, that stepped in to deliver these weapons? For decades, Burkina Faso's security story was written in Paris. French advisors, French trainers, and French troops dominated its defense. But that dependency came at a cost. France often tied aid to political loyalty, economic concessions, and compliance with Paris's role in the region. As the insurgency worsened and French-led efforts failed to stabilize the Sahel, Burkinabe resentment grew. By 2022, mass protests filled Ouagadougou's streets, demanding France's withdrawal. Eventually, French troops were expelled. The United States might have filled the void, but Washington's aid came with endless conditions: governance reforms, oversight, restrictions. For a country facing daily attacks, these caveats were luxuries it could not afford. China's model was different. No political lectures, no strings attached, just weapons delivered fast, at scale, and with financial flexibility. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré's government, which has built its legitimacy on sovereignty and independence, Beijing's approach was far more appealing. Where the West hesitated, China acted. And it wasn't just about practicality, it was symbolic. By turning to China, Burkina Faso declared that it was no longer a client state of the West. It was choosing its own partners, on its own terms. That's why the August 2025 convoys weren't hidden. They were meant to be seen by Burkinabe citizens, by France, by Washington, and by the entire Sahel. How is Burkina Faso paying for this? Of course, one question lingers. How can one of the world's poorest countries, with nearly 2 million displaced citizens, afford such advanced systems? The answer lies in China's flexible financing model. Unlike Western suppliers demanding cash up front, Beijing often uses deferred payments, concessional loans, or barter-style deals tied to natural resources. For Burkina Faso, this likely means gold. As one of Africa's top gold producers, it may have pledged a portion of future gold exports as collateral. This way, the government secures firepower today while spreading the financial burden into the future. This model isn't new. China has used it in Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo, tying infrastructure and arms deals to oil and minerals. Critics warn this risks mortgaging the country's future. Supporters counter that survival today matters more than debts tomorrow. In their eyes, the choice is simple: arm now or risk collapse. The bigger picture: a new Sahel, but the implications go beyond Burkina Faso. The arrival of Chinese convoys in Ouagadougou signals a geopolitical earthquake across the Sahel. France's credibility lies in tatters. The United States is seen as cautious and indecisive. Meanwhile, China has demonstrated that it can deliver advanced systems in months, reshaping the battlefield overnight. Mali has leaned on Russian Wagner contractors. Niger is exploring Turkish and Chinese partnerships. And now Burkina Faso is openly deploying Chinese rockets and armored vehicles. Together, these states form a new bloc, post-Western, sovereign, and increasingly aligned with non-traditional partners. For insurgents, the shift is just as significant. Their long-standing advantage, state weakness, may soon evaporate under the weight of guided rockets and armored autocannons. They will adapt, but the psychological balance of fear is shifting. And for Africa as a whole, this is about more than weapons. It's about agency. For decades, African nations were told their security depended on Western benevolence. Now Burkina Faso is showing that alternatives exist, that Africa can choose its own partners and chart its own path. The unanswered question yet, the story is far from over. Yes, Chinese weapons may help Burkina Faso regain ground. Yes, they may inspire other African states to follow suit. But dependency on Beijing carries its own risks. If repayment is tied to gold, economic shocks could hand China leverage over the country's future. And there is a deeper truth. Weapons alone cannot solve the root causes of insurgency. Poverty, marginalization, and broken trust between state and citizens remain the soil in which extremism grows. Autocannons can kill militants, but they cannot rebuild communities. Still, for Burkina Faso's leaders, the calculus is clear. survival today matters more than hypothetical risks tomorrow. The partnership with Beijing is not dependency, it is choice. It is sovereignty, redefined on Burkinabe terms. A new era begins when those Chinese convoys rolled into Ouagadougou. They were not just delivering armored vehicles and rockets. They were delivering a message: the Sahel is no longer a Western playground. The rules are being rewritten, not in Paris or Washington, but in Africa itself. And so the question remains, has Burkina Faso just triggered the biggest power shift in the Sahel's modern history? Will Chinese weapons turn the tide against insurgency, or create a new dependency under a different global power? One thing is certain, the game has changed, and the world is watching.